So if this story was a piece of internet spam, you know it would say, cure your leprosy with this one weird trick.
Another possible headline would be, newsflash, human nature hasn't changed in 2,800 years.
Right.
This is a story of the same palace intrigue, the same personal ambition, and the same fragile egos that infect Washington and Moscow and Pyongyang today. But we're not going to talk about headlines today, as huge as they've been. We want to talk about freedom. Partly because it's 4th of July weekend. Partly because last week we read St. Paul write his beautiful ode, "For freedom, Christ has set us free." And we talked last week about how biblical concepts of freedom are not exactly the same as our secular concept of freedom today. And we noticed, as we were working on this week, that this story has an unexpected perspective on freedom as well. That the powerless folk in the story have a greater moral freedom for truth-telling than the socially powerful characters in this story. And the most powerful character in this story, the great warrior and general Naaman, is the least free of all. He's the most afraid, he's the most superstitious, and he's decidedly the most controlled by his fragile ego. Like I said, people haven't changed much in 2,800 years.
In the culture of General Naaman's time, and sometimes in our culture as well, it was believed that if you had success in warfare, it was because you had pleased the gods of the land. And as Naaman is a successful warrior, he must be in good with the god of the land of Aram, a tribal deity known as Rimmon, or who we also call Baal, the Canaanite fertility deity. Naaman feels like he's in good with Baal because he's successful in battle, but there's one enormous catch, which is that he also has leprosy, which ironically was considered a punishment for having displeased the gods. And so this great and powerful Naaman is caught in a late Bronze Age theological conundrum. He's wildly successful on the battlefield.
Yay, Baal loves me.
But he has leprosy, which has ostracized him from much of his society.
Wow, Baal hates me.
He may be powerful, but he's stuck in a disease he can't fix. And his solution comes from a place that he did not expect. His wife's servant girl, slave girl, that he has brought home from a battle in Israel. Chances are this girl saw Naaman's army kill her family. At the very least, they tore her away from the people and the land that she loves. She's been through terrific heartbreak and trauma. And yet, somehow she's whole enough to see Naaman as another child of God, of the Yahweh, who she worships. And she's the one with grace enough to offer the news that there's a prophet in Israel who could do something about his disease.
And so Naaman goes to Syria. Syria. He's from Syria. He goes to Samaria, which we also call Israel, and brings the Israelite king a letter from the king of Aram that reads, "Know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." And the great king of Israel completely freaks out. He's screaming, he's crying, he's tearing his royal robes to shreds. It's a messy scene. The king of Israel, with all his royal power, has no freedom to operate here. He is trapped by this letter. He can't cure leprosy. And then when he can't, it means he's going to lose face, and he will be derided, and he fears he's being goaded into yet another battle with Syria that he will lose again. Now, when God's prophet Elisha hears of the embarrassing situation, he writes a letter to the king saying, in good King James English, "Freaketh not out, sendeth Naaman forthwith to me." And so Naaman goes again, seeking healing, this time to the house of the prophet of Israel, with his expensive gifts and his entourage of servants, expecting to be welcomed with some respect and some pomp, befitting a great general. But Elisha doesn't greet him. He sends a servant out instead with a simple message: go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean, meaning ritually clean. So now it's Naaman's turn to freak out, but in anger rather than fear and frustration. He's all puffed up. Doesn't this Elisha know who I am? Can't the prophet be bothered to see me personally? And what kind of bargain basement cure is this? Dunk myself in a puny brown creek like the Jordan. We have real rivers in Syria. Aren't they good enough? Naaman again feels bereft of freedom. He's trapped by his situation. He is so trapped by his station in life, his reputation, and his ego. He is left with no choice but to bellow and bloviate in his paralysis. His pride won't let him be free.
And once again, it's the least powerful person in that setting that has the moral freedom to tell a difficult truth to a powerful man having a temper tantrum. One of the servants gathers up enough courage to say, "My lord, if the prophet had asked you to do something ridiculously difficult, you'd have agreed. So why not do something ridiculously simple?" And somehow Naaman does swallow his pride, and he traipses morosely down to the muddy banks of the Jordan, goes in and out and in and out and in and out, and after the 7th time, his skin is as smooth as a baby's behind. It's a miracle. Clearly, Elisha serves a powerful God. And so Naaman tries to thank Elisha with gifts, but Elisha refuses. And so Naaman tries a different approach. He asks if he can take 2 mule loads of dirt back home with him. He's still caught in his old way of thinking, which is that the gods are tied to a certain people, a certain land, literally to a certain soil. And so he'll show he's loyal to Yahweh by bringing Yahweh's soil back home and building an altar on that soil. His idea of God is pretty small, but he's on the right track.
Oh, and there's one more thing. Naaman realizes almost as an afterthought that he's still trapped by his old beliefs back home. Because when he gets back home, he's going to have to accompany his king to worship Ramon/Baal in the temples to Baal. And he's going to have to act as though he's loyal to his king's God if he's going to keep his job and maybe his life. So he wants to make sure that Elisha's God, Yahweh, understands that Naaman won't really mean it. That when he bows down to Ramon/Baal, he'll have his fingers crossed. He's trying so hard to get this right, to thread this needle of competing religious and political loyalties. And he tells this story to Elisha, and Elisha simply says, "Go in peace."
Which I take to be a blessing from Elisha. I don't think Elisha is saying, okay, thank you for telling me. I'll let Yahweh know so that Yahweh doesn't give you leprosy again when you go into the prophet of Baal. I think Elisha is saying, be at peace, Naaman. Be free. Know that Yahweh, who cured you, also loves you. Don't be so tied up in your expectations and doing all the right things. Be thankful, be free, be at peace.
Be thankful, be free, be at peace. Good words for us. But how do we live out Elisha's blessing 2,800 years later? Here in the United States of America, on this July 4th weekend, the 249th birthday of our country. What does it mean to be people of Yahweh, the God of Elisha and the God of Jesus, in this quarter century after the signing of the Declaration of Independence that stated all men are created equal?
Quarter millennium, actually.
Quarter millennium, what did I say?
Quarter century.
Quarter
That's
century.
okay.
No, that's not right.
I have to admit that this year I am not able to maintain my usual sense of my country isn't perfect, but I think that it's more or less going in the right direction. This year, I'm especially aware that while the Declaration of Independence was a bold assertion of freedom, it was written on a foundation of expectations that denied freedom to many. And that our founding fathers, for all their insight and courage, didn't really mean all men were created equal. They just meant white and educated and landowning men. They didn't even think about women. And they certainly didn't think about the indigenous people they'd killed and driven off the land, or the enslaved people who were farming and keeping their land. Just as Naaman was powerfully successful on the battlefield and tormented by his leprosy, our country is founded on a great dream of equality that's hobbled by a basic system of oppression that's built into our very foundations. As our colleague Steve Garnes-Holmes puts it, America is built on the bricks of justice and liberty that are held together by the mortar of racism and genocide and patriarchy. They're both in our makeup.
To be Christian in this country in 2025, to be a follower of Yahweh and Jesus, is both to cherish this nation's dream and to work with all we have to end this nation's oppressions. In the words of William Sloane Coffin, longtime preacher at Riverside Church in New York City, the role of the church is to carry on a lover's quarrel with our country. a reflection of God's eternal lover's quarrel with the entire world. To be both faithful and free in this day and this time is to be heartbroken again and again and again at all the ways the least powerful people are ignored or beaten down or driven out or erased, or at the very least treated as a means to an end for those who are more powerful. To be faithful and free is also to believe in the promise of freedom for everyone, even those we oppose. To know they are children of God just as we are, just as Naaman was.
To quote Steve again, we have to stay faithful to our dream, not just ideologically, but behaviorally. We have to be gentle and inclusive. Even as we work against tyranny and domination, we have to engage both our allies and our opponents. It's not easy work. It is holy work. And we believe that together with each other and with God, this is how we will find and spread peace and justice and healing and wholeness through our land. One trip into the river at a time. One brave interaction at a time. Our witness to the God of love, each and every day, is where we can be both faithful and free. My friends, be at peace.